Hi folks, we're back cutting through the matrix, and as I say, we're in for the long haul, and we've been in for the long haul for quite some time actually, just people didn't really realize it yet. And people are strange that way. They always think that something's going to happen and suddenly get over it, and they don't realize that you have a big plan on the go. Since 9/11, of course, the time of really shock and awe for the whole planet, because all governments went into action with the same anti-terrorism laws at the exact same time, exactly the same laws. How can you do that? That's not coincidence. That takes years of planning and bureaucracies traveling back and forth and all of that stuff. So you know that it was all planned this way to get the system into a post-democratic system. Exactly as the Club of Rome have been saying for years. It says democracy would have to go because it was too cumbersome, too many competing parties and individual groups all fighting for different things and so on. And they couldn't get the big job done. The big job, of course, is the world order, as it's known basically to most people. The world order is coming into view as a collectivization of society, and that's why you have collective action too with the United Nations. The United Nations was created to really run the world's military and go into any country. This is on paper, of course, and it's not the real reason. Of course, they always give you a good reason, but not the real reason. But it was supposed to go into countries that were mistreating their own people, and they couldn't really get them all on board at any time in any one war against any one enemy until really now. And they've got pretty well most of the countries on board, and they all participate in slaughtering some other little country where big internationalists want their resources. So that's what we're living through today. And it's difficult for most people to believe because they're not like this themselves. That's why psychopaths can get away with what they do. And we do have clubs of psychopaths. They do find each other, and they can get along with each other with a bit of competition, of course. And they also have arbitrators too when they get too heady and too much into quarreling amongst themselves, because they're not supposed to let it be known to the public about the little feuds that they have. They're supposed to be presented as one happy family with presidents, prime ministers all shaking hands and playing golf, that kind of stuff, all kind of nice. So, but nothing's really further from the truth. Psychopaths are very competitive, and power is something, as I say, the ordinary person generally is not addicted to. You sometimes find the ordinary person addicted to some kind of game where they feel powerful in a game, and it's all fictitious and doesn't harm anybody. But you get the same kind of character and put them in with a suit and tie and get them into the right organization like the Council on Foreign Relations, scoot them up the ladder there, and then you stand back and watch them go to play. And the power motive is very, very important to them. What's interesting too is it's very similar to pedophiles and sex deviants. With age, they don't really lose it. They don't lose that urge to dominate, you know. Even into their 80s or whatever, they're still very aggressive, big players, tremendous egos, and they're definitely abnormal. There's no doubt about it. So I've often pondered that very question. Is it abnormality that is called progress? Because we're led by abnormal people, really psychopathic people with no empathy at all. And by the way, they're trying to get the word evil down the memory hole, because some big philosopher in one of the, I don't know if it was Cambridge or Oxford, had written a book. I wouldn't buy the darn thing, but he's trying to basically stand up for psychopaths and say that they just lack empathy for people, and that they shouldn't be called so evil. You know, people who do waterboarding and signing documents to slaughter lots of folk, they shouldn't be regarded as evil. Well, I ain't going to apologize for the fact I'll always call them evil, regardless of what some silly philosopher talks about or PhD or whatever he is. Because they are evil people, and they do run the world, and they are the best con men you'll ever get. From the salesman that comes door to door to the ones at the top, they're all basically con men. They're like a creature that can analyze you and feel nothing except a vague interest in why you respond the way you do emotionally and in different ways to situations, and they emulate that, and then they reflect it back to you. In fact, they make awfully good actors. If you look at the categories of psychopaths, the hysterical, attention-seeking psychopath is lumped in with the politician. They're both psychopaths of the same kind of order, which is quite interesting. So that's really how it runs the world. And of course, they must reward themselves terribly, terribly well for being psychopaths. because their ego is of prime importance to them. Even when they're caught doing something crazy, or even the ones who murder and are caught in the middle of it, will always rationalize why they murdered the person and be very indignant when they're accused of it doing it for lust, greed, or whatever. They'll still try and rationalize it so sillily to the listeners and onlookers. So it's just the way they are. However, we're run by them. In primitive tribes, you can't get that, because when someone shows abnormality like that, and you know that he's not going to do his little term in the hut, not the office, but the hut, at least the local people can get rid of him rather sharpish and quickly and easily. And he doesn't have an army, of course, to defend him, a private army, because he doesn't have money. You need money to get mercenaries, which are just private armies, to guard you. And we find that all down through what they call civilization. Civilization, technically, I think, has always been personally run by psychopaths. That's my opinion, after reading lots and lots of history. And even reading other psychopaths put glory upon the ones who try to get world orders in their own day, like Alexander the Great. And you'll see all these writers and teachers and university lecturers to say how wonderful this guy was, and he conquered here and he conquered there and he slaughtered here and he grabbed this and grabbed that and all the way to India. And we're supposed to really believe this is a wonderful thing. Was it? Why was it so darn wonderful? Just because you get winning all the time? Is it a football match or what? But that's just the way it's presented in school. These guys are just wonderful. Same with Napoleon, Napoleon's the same kind of character. And the one thing about Napoleon, he left a lot of memoirs about himself and glorifying himself naturally. But he had a sharp, easily understandable mind in some way. It's very cool. Cool because psychopaths do not tolerate frustration. They can't tolerate frustration. They must get things done immediately. And they're masters at manipulating everyone else around them to do what they want them to do. Masters at it. In fact, lots of them will do it willingly. Very, very willingly indeed. But as I say, history is all wrong in that respect. Civilization truly is brutal, as ancient philosophers used to say, because they slaughtered their way into places and enforced the superior culture upon them, and the money system, and the debt system, and the borrowing system. And they're always in league with bankers, of course. So civilization, money, bankers, all of that go together. You can't even get a class who have not much to do unless you have a monetary system, so they can sit in little Greek islands and togas and chat about things like atoms in thousands of years ago. This is what we're told anyway, the atomic or atomist club, they call them. They just knew that matter wasn't really solid and that these little things were about in space. And you can't get a leisure class who are into intellectual pursuits unless you have a slave society, basically, and cash. So, anyway, we're still apparently on the road to progress, and progress and civilization go together. They're part of the same group or mob system. And people have often said to me too, well, what other system can you have? And I always answer, well, I've seen enough people who live in different situations in different nations and countries. And the person who perhaps lives in the outskirts of Borneo, one of the islands of Borneo, they're probably happier than we are because they don't have debt, they don't have taxation. They can build their little house anywhere they want to. It's a pretty good climate. And there's lots of wild boar and stuff around to hunt. They can fish. And they're self-sufficient. They don't know anything about Einstein or any of this kind of nonsense. They don't have to. And I often say, do we either, for that matter. And they don't have all these massive wars going on. The most they have for a war is a tribal skirmish, which is more cuts and bruises once in a blue moon than anything else. It's better than dropping atomic bombs or phosphorus bombs over entire areas and burning women and children and men up. That's what I think, anyway. That's my personal opinion. Plus, life has far more meaning to them because in whatever spiritual way they are, doesn't matter what it is, they're far more in tune with nature than we'll ever be as we sit in front of our computers and pay our electric bills and all the rest of it. And life has meaning to them, lots of meaning. They also venerate the elderly and take care of them with a national health service. And they build each other's huts, by the way. When someone needs a place, it's no big, you don't run off for a permit and pay off engineers and pay off fees left, right and centre before you can build it. You just go and do it. And that's all there is to it. It doesn't cost them a penny. And they have a nice meal at the end of the day. So I never criticize so-called primitive cultures, as the elite call them themselves, and the psychopathic elite that run this system of civilization. They always talk about primitive cultures and arrested civilizations, meaning what they mean by that is that they can't get them into this monetary system and working 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever it happens to be, and get a paycheck at the end of the week. The people are really not interested at all. And they've never gone beyond the tools they can make themselves, which is wonderful because they're not dependent on any outside force or private corporation to supply anything they need. Everyone else in the civilization is completely dependent for spare parts, for everything, and that kind of thing. Anyway, that's my little rant off the top of my head there, because I'm just pondering that today. And apart from that too, these little communities have a better form, a truer form of democracy than we'll ever know, because everyone can speak. Everyone has a speak and a say together, by the way, and not phoning away halfway across the world to some European Parliament or some place in the Americas when they put the American Parliament up for the Americas. You're right there, and you can say whatever you want, and you do take a vote, because everyone that the vote's going to concern must be present. So if it concerns you, you've got to be present. And here we are bombing some other countries out of existence to bring them in. Makes me sick. Anyway, back with more after this break.